sunsets, when you look at it, have extraordinary splendor. There is great beauty in a tree. And a sheet of water has immense meaning. And a bird that's flying across the sky of an evening tells you a great deal if you know how to look. Which is not romanticism, which is not sentimentalism, but the capacity to look, and not immediately translate it into poem, into some romantic gesture, but to merely to observe with quiet beatitude and affection. That is to observe. You can't do anything about the sunset. It's there. You can't change it. You can't cover it up. You can't run away from it. It is there.
Jiddu Krishnamurti was born at Madanapalli, a small rural town in Andhra Pradesh. The eighth son, he came into the world at his mother's insistence in the puja room of a tiny rented house. His parents, Narayanaya and Sanjeevamma, were Telugu-speaking Brahmins. Krishnamurti was an indifferent student, often beaten by his teachers. And he grew up to be a dreamy child, in the habit of taking long walks up a distant hill to the lone temple standing at the top. In 1875, Madame Blavatsky founded the Theosophical Society. Based on occult doctrines, the society soon attracted a large and international following. its headquarters were moved to Adyar at Madras. And here, amid beautiful surroundings, the Theosophists awaited the coming of the world teacher. Narayanaya was a Theosophist, and in 1909, after the death of Sanjeevamma, he moved to Adyar with his children. One day, when the boy Krishnamurti was playing on the beach at Adyar, he was noticed by Leadbeater, a prominent Theosophist. Leadbeater went on to predict that the unimpressive youth would one day become the new torchbearer. Krishnamurti and his younger brother Nitya were now taken away from their father to live in the Theosophical Society. Krishnamurti to train in his future role as world teacher, Nitya to be the world teacher's helper and companion. A new organization, the Order of the Star, was also set up to prepare the way for the coming of the world teacher. Mrs. Besant presently adopted the two boys and sent them abroad for their education. Thrust into elegant society, they traveled between London, Paris, and California. In 1922, at the age of 27, Krishnamurti had an intense spiritual experience and transformations of consciousness. He said, "Love, in all its glory, has intoxicated my heart. I have drunk at the fountain of joy and eternal beauty. I am God intoxicated." But when, shortly thereafter, Nitya died of tuberculosis, despite assurances to the contrary, Krishnamurti's world was shattered. This was the turning point in Krishnamurti's life. At the Star Camp held at Omen on August the 3rd, 1929, in the presence of Mrs. Besant and thousands of other members, Krishnamurti deserved the star. The same year, he resigned from the Theosophical Society also. Krishnamurti said, "I maintain that truth is a pathless land, and you cannot approach it by any path whatsoever, by any religion, by any sect. Truth, being limitless, unconditioned, unapproachable, it cannot be organized. If you do, it becomes a creed, a sect, a religion to be imposed on others. My only concern, therefore, is to set man absolutely and unconditionally free, rejoicing as the bird in the sky." The Krishnamurti Foundation was formed based on this insight. Its 4 centers in England, USA, Canada, and India propagate Krishnamurti's teachings and run educational institutions. Krishnamurti is above and away from all the possessions of the foundation.
So this evening, we ought to talk over together. I mean together. This is not to instruct you of anything or to inform you, but we are as two friends having a dialogue, conversation. Can we together go into certain problems this evening, which is death, what it means in life, our daily life from death. One thing is absolutely certain, which is that we're all going to die. Right? Whether you like it or not, that's an absolute, irrevocable fact. You and the speaker are going to die one day, I hope. Not a few days, but many, many years later. So we ought to talk over together as two friends, not agreeing or disagreeing, but look at it all, the living and the dying. What is living? What is it that we call living? Please, this is a discussion. This is a dialogue between you and the speaker. So, work it out. What do you call living? Is living this constant struggle, constant conflict, seeking power, status, position, and not be perhaps being able to get it, and living in constant battle with oneself. And the living is what we call anxiety, attachments, right? The living is going to the office, whether it is the highest ministers of this country or the lowest clerk, going to the office every day for 60 years or 50 years of your life, from 9 to 5, being insulted, pushed around, right? Unless you are the top executives. That's what we call also life. The responsibility of earning a livelihood with money to support your wife and children and educate them. And the education is pretty rotten, as it is in this country, and elsewhere too, that are merely emphasizing, memorizing, right? And making them into machines. You are programming them to be mathematicians, to be engineers, to be scientists, right, and so on. They offer a means of livelihood, and so you spend 8 hours of the day for the rest of your life, and then retire to die. This is a fact. Seeking God, seeking peace, seeking some kind of shelter, some kind of way of living that is not so utterly shallow, empty. Is it possible to educate not merely the academic side of a human being, but the totality of the human, the wholeness of man? The wholeness of man being not only the technological academic side, the functional side, but also the psychological nature of man. We seem to neglect entirely the inward, the psychological nature of man and its structure. So, proper kind of education is the cultivation of the wholeness of man, including the psychological as well as physiological and so on, the entirety of man, neglecting neither the one nor the other, nor emphasizing the one or the other. so that a human being grows up harmoniously without any conflict, inward conflict or outward conflict. And this seems to me necessary in a world that's going more and more crazy, more and more immoral. So is it possible to create such a school? Not by a few of us, but all of us together. Those who are interested in school may not have their children here, but to be concerned with the total development of man.
When did it start raining? What would you say? When did it start raining? This is an interesting question. It relates to what we've been doing in science.
Is it possible
How is rain formed?
to teach any academic subject without any kind of persuasion, pressure,
Means there were no
compulsion?
So what formed it to water exist?
In teaching any particular subject
It not have been a small quantity. It existed as
or
steam or as water.
self-revealing
Then what was happening to the earth all along?
awareness
It was cooling down. And as it cooled down, what happened?
requires attention. Is there a way, without persuasion,
It condensed.
without compulsion, without any pressure, to bring about this attention, so that when there is this attention, each one of us listens to the other completely. And any subject, can it be related to the wholeness of man? History is not about kings and wars and conquering others and lands and so on. Not only that, but history is the story of mankind. The story of mankind is the story of you who are the mankind. In studying history, you are studying actually yourself, because you are the representative of all mankind, not Canadian, not an American or Russian or Englishman. You are the world. So when you are teaching or informing another about history, you are actually studying yourself. And so you can relate history to the person who is studying it. And so there is greater integration, greater perception into the whole structure and nature of oneself. So we're asking, is it possible to do the curriculum and also cultivate the psychological investigation of oneself, so that there is actual transformation of the human mind. What we mean by continuity is all the memories which we have collected, all the beliefs, all the experiences, the pain, the sorrow, the loneliness, the despair, all that we want it to continue, because we want to continue the mean. Everybody longs for this continuity, which is continuity as security. And if there is death, is that the end of everything? Right? Now what do we mean by ending? Let's go and talk about it a little bit. Have we ever ended something voluntarily? Your anger, your jealousy, your aggression. Have you ever said, I'll end it? Not tomorrow, but now, completely end it. But our brains are conditioned to the idea of gradation, gradualness. Therefore, we never end anything. Far end of one's life. We cling to what is known. Death is unknown. And we rather live with all the turmoil we have, all the misery, the confusion, and the longings. We'll rather have that which we call life, living, and avoid death as far as possible, right? At the end of everything. We are asking you as a friend, can you live with death while living? You understand my question? That is, when I die, not only the organism is cremated or buried or whatever that his friends do to him as when he dies, and that is the end of everything, though we may want a continuity next life, but that's the actuality of your end. Now, death means that, to end. Right? Can you live with death and together, life and death together? Have you ever asked that question?
Krishnaji, for some years, you have been speaking of the need for a new mind, a culture which will be able to deal with the problems which we face not only in this country but in the world. Problems of growing cruelty, increasing violence, tremendous callousness, a disregard for human life, and a growing distance between the human being and the sacred dimension. If we go in this direction, annihilation seems inevitable. But how is this new mind, this new culture, to come about?
I don't know what you mean by the new culture, new mind. Biologically, and also psychologically, human beings have traveled a long distance, 40, 50, 100,000 years. And they've always talked about, as far as I can understand, a different way of living. And apparently, in the 20th century, we seem to have forgotten all that altogether. As you pointed out, we have become extraordinarily violent, brutal, cruel, barbarous, if I can use that word. And out of this present soil, a new culture cannot possibly arise. We must move out of this soil. You can't have a marvelous, tender plant with constant wind, snowstorms, and without water. It can't live. So it seems to me, not only in this country, but all over the world, the spreading of violence, political corruption, and other forms of corruption, and the constant threat of war cannot possibly produce a new culture. I think man has to change himself, because he is not the measure of himself, but he has to be completely aware of what he is, actually, not theoretically. What he is this nationalistic division, religious division, sectarian division, gurus who bring about various other forms of divisions, or the past gurus, they gone. I think all that has to be put aside completely. And man has to be responsible utterly for himself. Irresponsibility doesn't really convey that. Man has to realize what he is first. What has been, what after all this millennia, he still bothers. I think that's the first thing he has to, not read Gita and Upanishads and the Bible and all the fundamentalists and all that. It's just, in modern age, all that has gone, no meaning. I think that's a fundamental.
You said something just now, that man is not the measure of himself.
No.
It's a very challenging remark. If man is not the measure of himself, what is he the measure of?
See, Pupulji, you raised a question, Pupulji. What is sacred? Right? Without finding that, without coming upon it, not you finding it, Without that coming into being, you can't have a new culture. You can't have a new human quality. And obviously, that which is sacred is not in any temple. Right? Yes. In any mosque, in any church. And no guru, none of them cannot talk about it. If they had it, it would be something so enormous. You can't turn it down and give it little bits of it to people. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
I feel that man also has a capacity for attention in which he can see the limitations and how they fit in.
If he can attend, right? If he attends completely, which means with all his nerves, with all his heightened senses, not destroying the senses, as the religions throughout the world advocate, with all the senses awake. And in attention means there is no self in that attention. That's all. If he has that, which is not within the structure
of the brain, but it is there in man.
No, it is there. When you have that attention, you enter. Not you enter. There is that which is beyond the brain. You may not accept this. Quite, you should. One must be skeptical about this. The brain has immense capacity. Yes. There is no question. And that brain is limited by our psychological activity. And the mind, to me, from K, is something totally outside the brain. This you don't have to accept it, but you can at least look at it.
Yes.
You can observe it, you can question it.
But when we talk of the ground just now, we are talking of the ground as the brain.
As the brain. In that, I don't know if Mr.
I do, sir, I do. Accept it.
What?
That by ground we mean the brain.
Yes. Can the brain, which has been conditioned, there's no question, linguistically, religiously, politically, geographically, climatically, and the division of nations, religions, the brain in itself is fragmented. And the brain has become fragmented through the activity of thought. The activity of thought is in itself limited because experience, knowledge, and so on. I won't go into all this. So the brain is the center now of man. He knows nothing about the other, mind, but within this brain we are trying to solve all our problems. Right? Yes. And we hope from this ground of the brain, if we can use such a word, we hope to bring about a new culture.
Krishnamurti is regarded by thousands as one of the great teachers of all times. "90 years of age, he continues to travel, to speak, to discuss, and to be silent with vast numbers of people who come to him seeking solace or an answer to the challenge of our times." Krishnamurti's teaching is difficult to summarize. Based on a vast, unitary perception of humanity and all life, he demands a life of correctness, a life free of self-centered activity, and an integral perception which alone frees man from duality and the bondage of time. As the end of his journey approaches, he probes into beginnings, into that which lies beyond ending, into the unmanifest, which is the source of all creation.
Because man, throughout the ages, has searched for something beyond time, something that is incorruptible, something beyond all experience, beyond all knowledge. So he said, there must be somewhere something that is not perishable, that's incorruptible, that's timeless, eternal. That seed has been sown in man from time immemorial. You understand, sir? And we have got that seed moving all through mankind. And we have never opened or looked at that seed. We have said what that seed should be. You understand what I'm saying? For God's sake, move, sir. We never said, this thing which man has started from time immemorial, I wonder if it can ever flower, grow. You understand my question, sir? That is meditation, where there is no conflict, where there is affection, care, not your children, care for the world around you, care for your woman, for your man, so that there is no domination of each other, no exploitation of each other. If that isn't laid down as a foundation, you can't move. What you're trying to do, you neglect all that and try to find some God somewhere. If you don't begin there, what you'll end up is an illusion. Meditation can never be conscious, can never be thought out, premeditated. Then you will find very naturally and very easily there is a quality of stillness in the mind. It is only that enormous sense of stillness and silence. And the brain then is in a vast space. Then only truth can come into being. And that's real meditation.
Why do you do what you do, giving talks everywhere?
I really don't know. It isn't a habit. It isn't something which I've fallen into and I do it because I have nothing else to do. I've been doing this for 45 years and more. Not that I'm proud of it, I'm just repeating the fact. And I also have stopped talking to see if I depend on the audience and, all that business. And I say, if I stop talking, it's all right. If I don't talk or talk, it's the same. And I do it probably, I don't know, out of affection.